When we think about the dangers of cars, we picture screeching tires, shattered glass, and violent collisions. But sometimes, the most disturbing deaths don't come from high-speed crashes. They come from unexpected, almost unthinkable scenarios. These are 5 of the most unusual car-related deaths ever recorded. 16-year-old Kyle Plush was a promising teenager with a sharp mind, a warm personality, and a sense of humor. A student at Cincinnati's Seven Hills School, he was the kind of teenager who stood out, competing in academic competitions, playing tennis, and lighting up a room with his wit. But on April 10, 2018, the promising life of this unforgettable young man ended in a horrifying and preventable tragedy that would send shockwaves through the city and expose deep flaws within its emergency response system. That day, at around 3 p.m., Kyle had gone to retrieve his tennis gear from the family's 2004 Honda Odyssey, parked in the school lot. While reaching into the rear cargo area, the third-row bench seat unexpectedly flipped down, pinning his chest against the floor. Unable to free himself or breathe properly, Kyle found himself trapped in a position that quickly became life-threatening. Though physically immobilized, he remained conscious and used Siri's voice activation to call 911. His first call came in at 3:14 p.m. He pleaded for help, repeating that he was stuck in his van and needed assistance. The dispatcher on the line had trouble hearing him due to his distance from the phone. Kyle said he couldn't hear her either. She repeatedly asked for his location, but the call remained plagued by miscommunication. Despite the urgency in Kyle's voice, the lack of clarity meant critical information wasn't passed along to the officers dispatched. At 3:26 p.m., a police deputy arrived and patrolled the school's parking lots but failed to exit his vehicle. He later told dispatchers he had looked in a van and didn't see anyone inside. Around that same time, Kyle made a second, more desperate 911 call. Struggling to breathe, he clearly stated he was inside a gold Honda Odyssey, likely without much time left, and asked the dispatcher to tell his mother he loved her in case he didn't survive. Tragically, the operator who received this second call never relayed the make, model, or color of the vehicle to responding officers. The call lasted 2.5 minutes, and again, Kyle's pleas were not met with effective action. Officers left the scene at 3:37 p.m., unaware that Kyle was only steps away, dying inside the van. By the evening, when Kyle failed to return home or appear at his tennis match, his parents grew concerned. His mother, Jill, called 911 to report him missing. Using the Find My iPhone app, they tracked his device to the school parking lot. At around 9 p.m., Kyle's father, Ron Plush, arrived and discovered his son unresponsive, still trapped beneath the collapsed seat. Emergency responders attempted resuscitation, but it was too late. The coroner later ruled his cause of death as asphyxia due to chest compression. In the wake of Kyle's death, public outrage erupted. An internal review by the police department initially cleared the dispatchers and officers of serious wrongdoing, aside from a body camera violation. But many, including Mayor John Cranley and members of the city council, criticized the investigation as incomplete. Independent firms were brought in to examine both the police and the 911 center responses. Councilwoman Amy Murray stated that Kyle did everything a child should be taught to do in an emergency and was failed catastrophically. The Plush family echoed that sentiment. Jill and Ron described their son as larger than life, funny, kind, intelligent, and full of promise. They spoke publicly in the months that followed, determined to push for change. Eventually, the city of Cincinnati agreed to a $6 million settlement with the Plush family, one of the largest in its history. As part of the agreement, the city committed to major reforms of its emergency response system, beginning with the hiring of outside experts and the implementation of Smart 911, a service that allows individuals to preload essential personal information for emergency situations. Kyle's death was a personal tragedy, but also a systemic failure. His story continues to drive reforms, with his family advocating so that no other child is ever left unheard in a moment of need. On the morning of February 3, 2021, in Little Ferry, New Jersey, a seemingly normal winter scene became the setting of an unthinkable tragedy. A 62-year-old man navigating icy conditions after a major winter storm found himself stuck in a snow-covered lot near Lowson Sloat Creek Park. It should have been a simple rescue operation. Instead, the man's life came to a devastating and deeply unsettling end, leaving investigators, emergency responders, and loved ones searching for answers. That morning, a public works employee noticed a Mazda CX-5 lodged in the snow near a soccer field off Maroff Road. The SUV appeared to have mounted a parking divider and had become immobilized. The employee alerted police, prompting 2 Little Ferry officers to respond just after 9 a.m. Upon arrival, they found the vehicle's engine being aggressively revved as the driver attempted to free it, shifting forward and backward repeatedly in an effort to dislodge the SUV from the snowbank. The man inside the vehicle seemed unaware or unresponsive to the officer's presence. Both officers, including one trained as a firefighter, began banging on the windows and yelling for him to stop accelerating, as they had already called for a tow truck. Despite their loud and urgent efforts, the driver continued to press the gas pedal, and the vehicle rocked back and forth, tires spinning in place. Moments later, as the officers began to retreat to their patrol car, a loud pop was heard from beneath the SUV. Flames were suddenly visible beneath the engine compartment. The fire spread rapidly. Officers rushed back toward the Mazda, desperately trying to get in. They found the doors locked and attempted to shatter the glass. One officer managed to break a rear passenger window, but the fire had already overtaken the interior. Thick smoke and extreme heat forced them back. Within seconds, the entire SUV was engulfed. Firefighters arrived quickly and extinguished the flames, but it was too late. The man inside had been burned beyond recognition. The violent nature of the blaze and the speed at which it consumed the vehicle shocked first responders. Identification was ultimately confirmed using dental records. Authorities, including the Bergen County Prosecutor's Office, launched an investigation, calling the incident strange due to the fire's rapid ignition and intensity. The cause of the fire remains unclear. No official explanation has been released, though officers at the scene reported that the man did not respond to repeated warnings to stop revving the engine. Why he failed to react remains unknown. The incident took place in the aftermath of a powerful winter storm that had left much of the Northeast blanketed in snow and ice, straining infrastructure and limiting mobility. Police officials later described the fire as unusually fast and aggressive. Chief James Walters remarked on the disturbing nature of the scene, stating that he could not understand how the flames had spread so quickly. The man's family was notified. One longtime friend, who had reportedly known him since childhood, shared his sorrow and disbelief. He visited the site after the fire, finding the victim's cell phone nearby and taking a piece of the charred vehicle as a personal memento. He spoke of his grief and the daily void left by the loss, a reminder of how quickly the ordinary can become irreversible. Though many questions remain unanswered, what is certain is that the tragic death of this man has raised serious concerns about vehicle safety under extreme conditions, emergency response limitations, and the unpredictable dangers that can unfold in a moment. On a quiet September evening in the Bronx, 59-year-old Paulina Narekai stepped outside her apartment building at 2040 Bronxdale Avenue, planning to pick up a pizza for her family. It was a routine errand, one she had likely done countless times before. But on Friday, September 9, 2022, just 4 steps from her front door, Paulina's life ended in a sudden, horrifying accident that would devastate a close-knit community and leave lingering questions in its wake. Paulina was a well-known and beloved figure in the neighborhood. A stay-at-home mother of 3 and grandmother of 1, she had spent her life devoted to her family. Originally from Albania, she had made a life in the Bronx with her husband of 40 years, Fran Narekai. Those who knew her described her as kind, generous, and nurturing. She was known for looking after neighbors in need, offering friendship and care to those around her, and was deeply rooted in the local community. The driver involved in the incident was a 45-year-old man operating a gray 2016 Lexus SUV. According to reports, the vehicle was traveling along Bronxdale Avenue when it swerved to avoid a van stopped at the intersection of Kruger Avenue. In that sudden maneuver, the driver lost control. The SUV mounted the curb and violently struck Paulina, who was walking on the sidewalk. The force of the impact propelled her into a metal fence, where a spike impaled her body. The vehicle continued forward, crashing into the building behind her. Multiple eyewitnesses described the scene as chaotic and traumatic. A local Uber driver, Sala Roby, immediately rushed to Paulina's side and attempted to comfort her. A nurse who happened to be passing by also stepped in, recognizing the severity of her injuries and advising against moving her due to suspected internal bleeding. Emergency responders arrived quickly and transported Paulina to Jacobi Hospital. Despite undergoing emergency surgery, she succumbed to her injuries later that evening. Frayne, who had been in their apartment at the time, heard the sound of the crash and rushed downstairs, only to find his wife unresponsive. He later told reporters that he knew immediately she wasn't going to survive, citing the significant amount of blood and the extent of her injuries. Paulina's daughter, Diana Narekai, expressed disbelief and grief, especially given how close her mother had been to safety when the tragedy occurred. Her family was left heartbroken, struggling to comprehend the sudden loss of a woman they called sweet, selfless, and irreplaceable. In the hours and days following the incident, neighbors gathered outside the building to honor Paulina's memory. Flowers, candles, and balloons formed a growing memorial, a testament to the affection and respect she had earned over the years. People who had known her since childhood described her as a pillar of the community, always smiling, always present, always willing to help. The driver of the Lexus remained at the scene and was transported to the hospital in stable condition. Police said the crash appeared to be accidental, though the investigation remains ongoing. No charges have been filed as of now. According to public records, the SUV had accumulated 168 violations, including multiple offenses for speeding in school zones, a detail that raised concerns among residents. Some locals pointed to a newly installed bike lane near the intersection as a possible contributing factor, claiming the configuration created confusion for drivers and may have played a role in the crash. Others cited poor visibility and difficult road angles as potential hazards. One witness reported that the driver had mentioned his brakes failing, though this has not been officially confirmed. Paulina Narekaj's death was a devastating loss, sudden, violent, and deeply unjust. On the stormy evening of February 14, 2014, Julie Silito, a 49-year-old minicab driver from Finsbury, North London, was at work as she had been countless nights before, a devoted mother of 3 and a soon-to-be grandmother for the second time. She had ventured out that night despite high winds lashing the city. Despite the weather, Julie had insisted on working to buy a birthday gift for her husband. It was a selfless gesture, one that would end in tragedy. Julie was widely known as a loving and cheerful woman, deeply devoted to her family. She was married to Steve Silito, a security consultant, and together they had raised 3 sons. The couple was anticipating the arrival of a new granddaughter, news that had filled her with joy. Friends and family regarded her as warm, fun-loving, and exceptionally family-oriented. Her dedication to her loved ones was matched by a strong work ethic, and on that fateful Valentine's Day, she went out to earn just a little more to make someone else happy. At approximately 11:05 p.m., while parked near Holborn Underground Station in central London, Julie's silver Skoda Octavia was struck by an immense and unexpected force. As her cab idled on the roadside, powerful winds tore loose a massive section of concrete masonry from the parapet of a 120-year-old Victorian building. Weighing nearly 2 tons, the 6-foot section of stone fell abruptly from the facade and collapsed directly onto the vehicle. The entire front of the cab was crushed and the roof caved in, leaving Julie pinned in the driver's seat. She was killed instantly from catastrophic head injuries. Inside the car with her were 2 passengers, 25-year-old Luke Fitton and his 24-year-old girlfriend Bo Hootenbos. The couple had hailed the cab after a Valentine's Day dinner at Gordon Ramsay's Bread Street kitchen. The force of the falling rubble left them partially buried. Luke was crushed under the weight of the debris, suffering severe chest injuries and remaining trapped until emergency crews arrived. Bo was briefly unconscious but managed to regain awareness. Despite feeling metal pressing against her face and intense pain in her leg, she was able to crawl from the wreckage. Emergency responders from the London Fire Brigade, ambulance service, and police arrived within minutes. About 20 firefighters worked to rescue Luke and Bo, while paramedics attempted to resuscitate Julie at the scene. Despite their efforts, she was pronounced dead. The couple was taken to separate hospitals, Luke with serious injuries, Bo with minor trauma. A passerby also sustained leg injuries during the chaos. The next morning, cordons were set up around the building and nearby structures were evacuated as a safety precaution. The public was left stunned, and images of the crumpled cab surrounded by rubble spread rapidly through news outlets. The entire community, especially those who knew Julie personally, was shaken by the freak and fatal nature of the incident. In the weeks that followed, an inquest into Julie's death revealed troubling details. The building's owner, Taskin Izzet of Greenberg Development Limited, had not conducted a full structural survey or risk assessment on the property after purchasing it in 2007. While not required by law, the lack of formal inspections raised concerns. Expert testimony confirmed that the building's age and design allowed for potential structural issues, and that the extreme winds likely triggered the collapse. However, there was no evidence of ongoing neglect or visible signs of disrepair. The jury ultimately ruled Julie's death accidental. Julie's husband, Steve, addressed the court, emphasizing the need for legislation requiring structural inspections for older buildings. He described Julie as his everything and urged others to learn from the tragedy. Through tears, he asked one of the surviving passengers whether Julie's death had been quick. The answer, confirmation that she likely died instantly, provided a measure of solace. Julie Silito's death was a harrowing reminder of how quickly life can be taken by forces beyond human control. Her family, friends, and passengers live with the memory of that night, carrying both grief and gratitude for the life she lived and for those who narrowly escaped. On the afternoon of September 28, 2023, a tragic accident unfolded in the north parking lot of West Edmonton Mall, resulting in the sudden and devastating death of an 18-year-old male. The teen, whose identity has not been released to the public, was one of 3 individuals inside a Toyota Camry when the incident occurred. At a location known for its bustling activity, family attractions, and heavy daily foot traffic, an ordinary day turned fatal in a matter of seconds. The young man had been a front-seat passenger in the vehicle, which was being driven by a 17-year-old male. A 15-year-old girl was seated in the back. According to Edmonton police, the car was slowly navigating through the indoor parking structure when the victim stood up through the vehicle's open sunroof. The car was in motion, and as it passed beneath a ramp inside the multi-level parkade, the teen struck his head on a fixed concrete beam overhead. The collision was sudden and forceful. The beam, part of the structure supporting the level above, was immovable, and the impact likely caused immediate and catastrophic head trauma. Emergency services were dispatched following a welfare call at approximately 1:45 p.m. Officers and EMS teams arrived quickly to find the young man gravely injured. He received treatment at the scene and was transported to the hospital, but his injuries were unsurvivable. He was pronounced dead shortly after arrival. Neither the driver nor the backseat passenger reported any physical injuries, and both remained at the scene. The Edmonton Police Service has confirmed that speed and impairment were not believed to be contributing factors in the incident. However, due to the unusual nature of the accident, the case has been taken over by the Major Collision Investigations Section. Authorities appealed for any witnesses or individuals with dashcam footage that might help clarify the circumstances further. The accident occurred inside one of Canada's busiest commercial spaces. West Edmonton Mall, the second largest shopping center in North America, attracts roughly 32 million visitors each year. Known for its wide array of attractions, including an indoor water park, amusement rides, and hundreds of retail outlets, the mall is often bustling with visitors throughout the day. The North Parking Facility, in particular, is a large multi-level garage that connects directly to some of the mall's busiest entrances. Images taken shortly after the accident show emergency vehicles surrounding the scene, and parts of the parking facility were cordoned off to allow investigators to work. The concrete beam involved in the incident is a fixed overhead structure, standard in many older indoor parking facilities. At the time of the collision, weather and visibility conditions were not reported to be problematic, and there is no indication of vehicle malfunction. The community has responded with an outpouring of shock and grief, and many are left grappling with the heartbreaking reality that a moment of carelessness in a familiar setting led to irreversible consequences. Authorities urged the public to come forward with any additional information. One family was left to cope with the unimaginable loss of a young life, cut short in a moment that no one could have anticipated.